almost not surprised but appalled to see Premier Smith get up and start talking about high-speed rail in Alberta. This is an idea that there are train fetishists out there. That's really what they are. They got a thing for trains. They love trains. They think they're great. Good for you. You love those things, but it doesn't mean they're economically feasible. And they certainly aren't economically feasible everywhere. Premier Smith's always loved trains. She even had a restaurant in a train car for a while. But this is reeking of a pet project. This got studied, 12 years ago. We spent a bunch of money. We did a big study on it, and we found that high-speed rail won't work in Alberta. It doesn't work. We would need, it felt at that time, a population of about 10 million people. And the ticket prices, again, if you're guessing on it, if it got built, might be in the range of $200 to get Calgary to Edmonton. It just doesn't work. People keep talking about, and I've been debating them online. I don't believe in blindly following things. You see, that's where people got so upset with me, because I was critiquing Danielle Smith. Well, I love a lot of what Premier Smith is doing. I've been very supportive of it, but this one's a stinker, guys. This is bad news. Do not start moving towards this. We studied it. They said it was crap. Leave it alone. But she won't. And when the way they were talking so gushingly and everything, saying we're just studying it. No, they're starting the groundwork to move towards this. I get other people saying, oh, but look at how it works in Japan. Look at how it works in France. Yeah, well, let's look at that. Japan has, 120 million people in an area that's only a little bit bigger than half the size of Alberta. That's a rather big difference. We have 4 and some million, maybe getting towards 5. Not even close, guys. Meanwhile, France, same sort of thing. I think they have 60 million and far, far more dense. High-speed rail doesn't work for that. Think of it. What if building that between Calgary and Edmonton? Okay. And let's say it costs $10 billion. That means out of your pocket right off the bat, and trust me, it'll cost more than that. Think of expropriating all the land required. Think of all of the battles that'll have to go on, the court challenges, the rest. So let's say you got that right of way going. Then you got the stations built. You got all that done. You got that train in. And let's say it was even $10 billion. That means every man, woman, and child in Alberta will be shelling out about $2,000 each just to have it built. That's what the cost would come into. And of course, not everybody pays taxes. So realistically, if you're a middle-class taxpayer, it's more like you're going to be shouldering about $3,000 of that. And then you're going to have to pay a couple hundred to ride this thing. Maybe, or it'll be subsidized down. So you'll pay all the time whether you ride it or not, and then get a relatively cheaper ticket. We don't need this. It's ridiculous. Get on it. People say Highway 2 is so crowded and nasty. Yes, it is. So expand it. Look at the vehicles on Highway 2 in Alberta. Not all of them are going all the way from Calgary to Edmonton. Some of them are going Calgary to Ponoka. Some of them are going Ponoka to Westlock, and past Edmonton, things like that. And they're people with vehicles. They're people with families. They're people with luggage. Do you really want to go through, okay, I'm going to go from Calgary to Edmonton to visit Aunt Edna there, and I'll take the 2 kids. So let's say it's a family of 4. Okay, we're going to take an Uber and pay that price, or we'll drive to this train station and pay for parking. Check in, check our luggage, spend $100 a head. So it's $400 one way to get the family up there without including the Uber and parking costs. And you get to the other side in Edmonton, maybe half an hour earlier than you would have if you just bloody drove, even if it's a high-speed train, because you had to stop in Red Deer. And then you got to get an Uber, get in that, and go all the way to Aunt Edna's, and then you're stuck without a vehicle for your visit. And you got to listen to her interminable stories about her bad hip and things, and you can't even make an excuse saying, I'm going to hop in the car and go to the liquor store because you took the train. Look, guys, it's going to be a very limited market. And then I've had others talk about it. Look at Via Rail in Canada. It's a catastrophe. It's heavily, heavily subsidized, and it's terrible service. And then there's other people saying, well, that's because they have to share the tracks with CP and they don't get priority routing and things like that. Well, okay. But then when we want to start talking about costs, when you're talking about, say, some people are saying, well, we would just do Banff to Calgary on a conventional rail. Oh, okay. Well, then you got to share the track. So it'll have the same problem as Via. So you're dealing with CP because they own that track. Or you build another track. And again, for people not familiar with Alberta, drive between Calgary and Banff. What have you got going on in there? For one, there's a whole bunch of mountains you're going to have to blast once you get into the Canmore-Exshaw region to get that track in there. The other part is you're going through the Stony Reserve. Yes. a great big First Nation you have to get through, and it's their land, and they have every right to negotiate the best deal they can. And again, if you're familiar with Calgary, we had a ring road that went through the Tsuut'ina Reserve. It took 40 years to negotiate that. 40 years. And cost billions. And that's just a chunk of ring road. How much do you think the Stoney is going to want to have a railroad track doubled through their reserve? It ain't going to come cheap. Look, we don't want to rule out other areas of transportation. We could talk about extending the LRT in Calgary. It's not a real long shot anymore from the northeast to get it to the airport, perhaps. And people have talked about, well, what about to Cochrane? Well, again, it's already moving up that way up Crowchild. Keep creeping it up that way if you've got the demand, and eventually you will have train transit going those ways. But look in Calgary as well. We got the Green Line they're talking about. The Green Line. We've been talking about it for years. And they've been ripping up downtown Calgary, doing utility work and crap on it for years. And it keeps, they won't make the budget bigger, which is $5 and some billion, but what they keep doing is making the Green Line smaller. So, I mean, eventually this thing's only going to be one station at the rate they're going, and taxpayers are on the hook. We've got to remember the world's changing too. Part of the problem with the Green Line, people don't work downtown like they used to. The office buildings in Calgary are still nearly empty all over the place. We got 30% vacancy going on down here. We got another boondoggle going on that showed with Gondek a little while ago, where they were converting an old office building into residential units. And it turns out that the contractors aren't getting paid now, and it's getting stalled, and there's a big problem. And of course, the taxpayers are pumping millions into that as well. Guys, people don't need to live downtown anymore. We haven't had to since the fax machine. That was kind of the beginning of the end. You don't see the bike couriers running around with maps and documents from oil company building to oil company building. In fact, a lot of people, that's one thing COVID changed all around, was people realizing I don't have to be down there all the time. I can work from home. I can do a whole bunch of the stuff that I did at downtown on a laptop or on a computer in my house. And they're doing that. Maybe not full-time, but part-time. So why are we building more infrastructure to suck everybody into a centralized city? The reality is we're growing out. Let's build to accommodate that. Let's get realistic. Let's look at it. Here's where, okay, to be fair, where some of the right can go a little wild at times. Let's look at complete communities, I think is the term they often use. A new development that'll be on the outside of a city, but it's higher density, and it also has a lot of the services built in for that, because that way people don't have to commute into the center. So make sure there's a school there, a medical facility there, retail space there, all of those things, so they don't have to move as far. Good stuff. It's just good planning, and it could sell. But we got to go out, not in, not up. Again, the people, if you care about affordable housing, high density stinks. Look to every high density city in North America. It's easy. It's great. You can study these things online. Look at the heavyweight high density cities. Look at Manhattan. Look at San Francisco. Look at Seattle. High density. Also expensive as all hell for renters and homeowners. Isn't that kind of contrary? But they've built up. Yes, but it doesn't matter, because the areas where you can get affordable is where you build out. You want to be affordable? Las Vegas, Phoenix, Houston, even Tennessee is getting really good out there. These areas where they're not fixated on this anti-suburban lunacy. They're just letting people build where they want to go. Let people choose where they want to go.